right. For everybody watching, welcome. My name is Marisa, and I am here from Pretty Little Yarns. We're located in Ontario, and you're probably wondering why I'm wearing a mask. So, unfortunately, earlier this week, my family came down with COVID. So, we are not allowed to leave the house to go to our warehouse to present. And also, we're wearing masks in the house to try and keep it um, safer for, like, we've got two little kids here. And so, hopefully, everyone stays with mild cases. And also, so that I don't contaminate any of the yarn or anything like that. So, um, it's a little inconvenient because I'm gonna fog up and you're not gonna see my eyes totally, but I'm gonna do my best here. So welcome, welcome everybody. I'm super excited to be here. I'm just going to switch over here. So first thing I wanted to let everybody know is that we do have a discount code going on for the show, and it is Fibre Love Affair, just to keep things simple, all caps. And you'll get 15% off with that discount code. And I've made it so that it lasts until the 15th of May. And that's because right now, just to be on like the super safe side, we're not shipping anything until after the last person in our house is done their quarantine. Um, there's no real concern about it, honestly, but for me, I just want to be err on the side of caution. And so that is what we've decided to do. So, that being said, I will move on um, and show you some of the things. So, I'm going to kind of go through a little bit about our store and the suppliers we work with, as well as some indie dyer spotlights, choosing coordinating colors with variegated yarns. When I did my last virtual presentation, um, what I learned was that a lot of people were very excited about the colors that we had going on, but they really wanted to see how you paired them up with other colors. So that's why I wanted to bring that to you today. And then I'm going to show you a little of the needle felted stitch markers that I create, which you got a sneak peek of with the prize. And after I show you a little bit more of them, I'm going to do a little demonstration. Hopefully, I have enough time to do all of that in an hour. I realized afterwards I was maybe a little ambitious this time. I was really excited to show everybody everything. I think that a year without formal fiber festivals was a long time for me to go without talking to anybody about these things. And I got a little carried away. So hopefully we get through it all. Um, So this is just a little bit about the creators and makers that I carry. So one of the cornerstones of my business is that I always wanted to have my small business support other small businesses in the crafting world. So I don't just carry I don't carry very much in the way of commercial yarns. I have a few Cascade lines, 3 Cascade lines, which I won't go into too much because most people are familiar with them. But I also carry different Canadian dyers and Canadian makers. So Sweet Paprika, Yarn Indulgences, Essence of Autumn, Sinister Yarns. Those are all our indie dyers that we carry. Dye Pretty is my in-house line of yarn that I dye. Bling Your String makes our project bags, and they're about 40 minutes from us. Chip and Sparrow is out of Guelph, and they make little mini looms. Diana Waters Handmade is in Toronto, and they make cross stitch and those kinds of kits. Candoodle Creations and Knit Bits Boutique make different stitch markers. And so all of these different creators we have from mostly Ontario. Sweet Paprika is from Montreal, but everyone else is mostly from Ontario. Oh, Yarn Indulgences just moved to New Brunswick. But everyone else is from Ontario. And it's really my pleasure to work with all of these people who are local to me, and it's just a really lovely feeling to kind of make friends with the suppliers and things that and really be in the process of what they're making from the beginning. Um, Again, Yarn Indulgences was one of our first dyers that joined our team, or was one of the first vendors for us. And all of the colorways that we carry from Yarn Indulgences are exclusive to our shop, that she designed for our shop when we first got going. And it's each based on a constellation and a virtue. So they're really beautiful colorways. These are just a couple of them, and I'll show a little bit more when we do our color pairing later on. But I have 4 different bases from her, and they're all stunning. I'm sure most people are familiar with Yarn Indulgence's work, and it's just a very I find her work is very unique in the way that she applies the dye. Always, you can kind of spot her yarn out of a crowd. The Sinister Yarns is another dyer we carry. Their yarn is, I find, probably our punchiest yarn, the most vibrant, energetic kind of feel, very like inner child being set free in this one. I always really like the colors that she has to bring. And again, I'll show you some more when we're doing our color pairings a bit later on. And they have multiple bases, um, from single ply to tweeds to cashmere, sock, DK, and even a chunky yarn as well. There's a really big variety there. Essence of Autumn is, outside of my own dyeing, our newest dyer to join our team, or not our team, but our lineup. And they, again, make really gorgeous yarns because I find their palette to be very sophisticated, and their colors are very rich, and they pair things that I find a little bit unexpected. So in this larger picture where you're seeing the big Gerber flower in the background, I don't often, I wouldn't have expected there to be purple in that color, for example, but there is, and it works. And it's one of those things where some dyers do things and you're like, wow, I wouldn't have even thought to do that. So their work is also really lovely. Sorry about that. This is our in-house dyed yarn, Dye Pretty Yarn and Fiber. That's me. I just launched my first repeatable colorway collection, that's all inspired by crystals. You can find it all on the website with everything else. But yeah, it's all inspired by different crystals. So on this page right now, you see rose quartz. There's a amethyst, is the center one, the phantom amethyst, and the black and white one is howlite. It was really fun coming up with these colors and kind of learning the different healing properties that people believe in for the different stones, when I was coming up with the colorways. And so that's been kind of fun. So that brings us to Sweet Paprika, who is kind of unwittingly going to be kind of the highlight of our show today because they are our solid colors. And so when I'm looking at the pairings for you guys, you're going to see me pair a lot of the things with the Sweet Paprika. And the way that their lines work is I have 3 of their lines, the Messa de Voce, Minuet, and Andante, and they're the fingering, DK, and worsted weight, but they all come in the same colors, and they're rich and vibrant colors that kind of work with any other yarns I find. But they also carry these crescendo. So I'm going to just flip my camera for a second, back to me. And I would love to show you some of the crescendo yarns that they carry, because those are really special. So give me one second. have them all here. Excuse the rustling. Now I only am missing one of their crescendo colorways, and that's because they came out with it after my last order, and then they went on mat leave. So for that reason, that is the only color that I don't have. So I'm just going to pull them all up and then show you. If anybody has any questions at any time, or you want me to show anything again or longer, please feel free to jump in. Sorry, we also have kids running around. Again, normally this would be done in my warehouse, but we're not allowed to leave. So, but my husband is checking the chat. So if anybody has any questions, throw it in there or pipe up and interrupt me. I love to hear from it. Otherwise, I'm thinking I'm speaking to myself. So here is their crescendo line. So you can see, if you're not familiar with it, they are 6 mini skeins that are dyed in a perfect gradient. And the way they've done it, they have some colorways that do this and actually go across 2 gradients. So you can make your color changes even longer. So there's those ones. And I'll show you the ones that go in pairs first, because then it makes sense. So these pinks and reds are really beautiful. One of these. Oh, sorry for all the rustling. Greens. And this is one of their newer colors. It's like a peachy to yellow to orange kind of color. It's being washed out by the camera, unfortunately. They have a lot of greens. Actually, this is a third set of greens. It's a little bit more sagey, I would say. This one is one of my favorites, and it's not going to show, but I have a sample of that one. So this is, of course, now the cowl name is going to slip my mind, but it is a Tunisian crocheted cowl that is worked with the gradient kind of going back to front and front to back at the same time. So it ends up being really beautiful and warm. And so that is that color. And I have another thing afterwards that I will show you as well with what you can do with these gradients. So I think a lot of people think of gradients and think you have to use them all in a row, all together to take advantage of the gradient. And I actually have a sample where that is not what was done at all. And it's still spectacular. So all of these colors are up on the website. And you'll be able to kind of read the color a little bit better outside of the plastic, as that's how it's photographed on the site. So, but I wanted to show you all of those because they're usually pretty eye-catching. This is another project that uses the red. It's called Black Rose. It's red to a dark red. And it also, it's going to be very big. It also uses the gray gradient as well, and then it pairs it with a gray. So this is the red side. I need to have longer arms for this one. And this is the gray side. And then they used, oh, man, I've got an extra pair of hands being offered. So yeah, so this is quite a long project. So that's the red side. And then they use graphite, which is a dark gray, to break it up. So it's just an alternative use for the gradient sets, because I think a lot of people get, like I said, stuck with the idea that you have to do a shawl that kind of goes in a gradient, or use it at the yoke of a sweater, but you can also break it up in that way, which is kind of neat. That is that. Sorry. I'm just going to go back to this. So you can see that orange swath of fabric in that smaller picture is actually the same Tunisian crocheted cowl that I showed you, but in a different colorway. Which brings us to combinations. If anyone has any questions, throw them in anytime. So after the last show that I did, I had a lot of questions about pairing yarns up, and I had a lady who won a giveaway in that show, and it was this pink and blue kind of variegated yarn that she won, and she wanted to know what she could pair with it that would work best. And I always think that it really depends on what you're going to do with that yarn when it's together. If you're making a project where the yarns are going to kind of go, say, a yoke of a sweater into the rest of the sweater, and you want it to kind of blend, you're going to look for one thing. If you want it to stand out because you're using the variegated yarn in like thin stripes or nups, I have a shawl somewhere where it is a solid color with little nups of variegated yarn, such that each nup is kind of a little shock of color. So you would use different techniques for choosing what color you're going to use based on the overall effect that you want. So in this example, she didn't end up telling me what she was making with it. So I came up with these several different examples. But the way I usually like to come up with it, and I'll do that as in real time for you, because that will be much more exciting. If I can find it, that's the one I want. Okay, so for example, if we were going to do this yarn from Essence of Autumn, this is a gilded merino, so it's a sparkly yarn, and it's got all of these kind of lovely golds, and they're reading very blue, but they're actually teal and turquoisey blue, and oranges and browns. So if you were going to want to see the yarn blend in some way, you would want to pick from the colors in here. So I already selected a few that work. Unfortunately, computers and cameras being what they are, the colors here are coming up a lot brighter than they are in real life. So if I can show it here, is a little bit more true to life. It's a little bit more muted, but in any case, so you could conceivably go with this that would match into this area. You could pick up the dark brown instead if you wanted something more neutral. You could go with the teal color that picks up in here. But if you were doing something where you wanted it to stand out, like I was explaining with the pinstripes or anything like that, you wouldn't want to do any of the colors that are in the yarn. And that's where it kind of tends to, I find people get a little bit lost in those times. I know that I used to, that if I wanted all of the colors to stand out, you need to pick something that goes with everything. Now, in this case, I think the color that would work best would be this creamy color because it kind of picks up on the lighter areas of this colorway. But in other cases, you might go with something totally different. So let's move on to a different color. Let me see. So this is one of the colors from Sinister Yarns, and it is called Art School Dropout. It is the most vibrant, rainbowy bananas yarn ever, and I kind of love it. But I personally probably wouldn't knit it straight. I would knit it with something else. And again, if I were to pair it with one of the colors that is actually in the yarn, then when you work those stitches side by side with this, say, I don't know if you can see this green and this green, they're going to blend. So you're going to lose the fact that you're doing two yarns together. So if you wanted this yarn to stand out at every turn, you're going to end up wanting to do something totally different. So pairing this with this would be probably my top choice because there isn't any dark gray in this skein at all. And the dark gray goes with every color that's in there. So when you're doing your shawl or your sweater or whatever it is that has the pinstripes or the nups or the single stitch details, maybe you're doing slip stitch work or whatever, you're going to have every single one of these colors shine against this one. Let me grab. So I didn't want to be too prepared because I didn't think that that would be very much fun. So I put my yarns in a bag and I'm just randomly grabbing. So you're kind of getting a live scenario of what I would pick on the fly. So this is again another Sinister Yarns and it is called Care Bear Stare. It is it knits up to be kind of speckled when it knits up. It doesn't look terribly speckled, but that it kind of has one stitch of color here and there and everywhere. So in this one, depending on what you were doing, right, you want to kind of either, again, you could go with something totally different or like this. That would work really lovely. Or you can pick any of the colors that are in the speckles and that would work as well. So again, it depends if you're going to do this as kind of a swath of color where it's a bigger section of the shawl or whatever it is that you're working on. Often you'll find there's like 3 color shawls. So you could do your 3 color shawl with a variegated yarn as one of the colors and just have the other colors picking up on that variegated yarn. And it just makes for a different usage of the variegated yarn because I know a lot of people can be kind of freaked out, if I may say that, about how to use the variegated yarns because they are a little bit I don't know. I think that they can be a little bit busy, and some people aren't into that look necessarily. So this is the color that was in the slideshow, the October, that had the unexpected hits of purple. And so for this color, what I would be tempted to do, because I love that purple being there so much, and it is so unexpected, I would probably want to highlight that color by picking it up with the solid. So many people have, like I find color is a very deeply personal thing. And so some people are into picking up on that color, but other people might say, oh, I really love this skein, except I wish it didn't have that purple. And then they might choose not to do that at all, but instead to pick up on the tealy blue that's in it. And again, this teal is not showing up on camera, but it is, I promise you, it's more of a teal than it is this bright blue that's showing up. The other thing sometimes is that you have a yarn that is more speckly, that has more of these open spaces. And again, you might be wanting to use that kind of open space to replicate it. Now, I don't have another color in mind to show that with, but I can't find it. So, oh, that's not working on camera at all. I promise they're this, like, they match. So anyhow, so you would pick something out of here that matches up. I don't know if anybody has any questions. Everyone is very quiet today. If you're in Ontario, it's a little later in the day. Maybe you're done with asking questions. Which reminds me, where is everybody coming from? If you want to pop in the chat where you are, that would be wonderful. I'd love to know who's watching.
Donna says to remind people to alternate rows if using more than one skein of variegated yarns.
Yes, that is super, super important to know. So if you were, I'm going to switch back to this camera. So if you were using, for example, any hand-dyed yarn, even sometimes, so if you're using a hand-dyed yarn that is a solid, like the Sweet Paprika, as long as it's in the same dye lot, you can usually get away with not alternating your skein because it is solid enough that it usually works. However, the nature of the way hand-dyed yarn is dyed does allow for there to be a little bit of difference in the way the dye takes up. So I've never had a problem with that with the Sweet Paprika because, like I said, they're solid. But now if you were using these two skeins, they are from the same dye lot. They were dyed in the same pot. They were dyed at the same time with the exact same technique and the same dyes. But because they're hand dyed, they picked up the yarn differently. So this one has a little bit more of the brown in it. This one has a little bit more of the blue in it. They both have all the colors in about the same amount, but not necessarily in the same way. So if you were knitting a whole sweater or a whole shawl, you would want to alternate your skeins on every row so that you don't get any sudden jarring line of color change. Good reminder. So I'm looking at what time we have. I think I'm going to wrap up the color pairings for now, unless anybody has anything that they specifically want to see. Oh, I will say that the Sweet Paprika yarns also pair beautifully together. The way that their palette works is that it works really well together. So it's easy to very quickly pull together multiples that work well together. So something like that is really lovely. If you wanted a neutral palette, this is really beautiful. You can do something kind of monochromatic and put these together, which are reading very orange, but it's a deep red, a medium orange red, and an orange. So there's so many options. A lot of people are really into gray and yellow right now, and these are really, really pretty. I'm going to hold them up here because they're coming out, but they're really pretty. But if you are ever looking for color combinations, I'm going to um, start getting things ready for the next part of the presentation. But if you're ever looking for color combinations and you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed on the website, oh my goodness, I'm looking a little windblown with these glasses and masks and everything. So, but if you are, just feel free to anytime contact me by the email form on my website or on Instagram. I'm pretty good at answering DMs on Instagram. And I'm always more than happy to kind of give you a personal shopping experience where I put some things together like I did with that lady who wanted those different color options, and I'll photograph them for you in the most accurate way I can and send them to you, and I'm pretty sure you'll be happy with it. So, the next thing I wanted to talk to you about is our needle felted stitch markers. So, I make all of the needle felted stitch markers myself. They are lightweight, and I know I showed one of them before. They're a little tricky to show on camera just because of the fact that they are tiny. But again, this is the one that is being given away for the giveaway associated with the show. And it's also in the top corner there. You can see it actually. They're all needle felted by hand, and then they're obviously by hand put onto the charms, and they all come with little ring stitch markers that go with them. They also have options. I can show this particular set afterwards, but just for reference, they also have an option to be put on a bangle with a matching color metal. And the bangle allows you to keep your stitch markers all together in one handy place. So here are some of the ones that I have made in the past. And this is a look at what I just launched in my spring release. I tend to try to aim to do a new set of designs every season. My spring release included a half dozen donuts. There is from the top, it's a jelly filled donut, a rainbow sprinkle donut, a chocolate glaze, um, chocolate dip, chocolate glaze, old fashioned plain, and a Boston cream. The center panel, not everyone will probably be familiar with these, but during the pandemic, my kids and my husband and I have started playing a video game called Among Us that allows us to play with some of my son's friends and some of our friends, and has just really helped us stay connected with the outside world during this time, because my kids are 6 and 4 and they're doing online school. And so it can be a little isolating. So this game involves little space guys. That's the best way I can describe it. They're little space guys. And these are some of the little space guys. They're little characters that I needle felted to make into stitch markers as well, for anybody who's as big of a nerd as we are. And then on the far right, you can see the macaron collection, which is just, inspired by those delicious little sweets that you find in all of the beautiful pastel colors. So we have a lemon, vanilla, pistachio, raspberry, lavender, and of course, chocolate. So those are the ones that we just launched. And
Barbara has a question asking what size needles you use to felt these tiny marbles.
So if I may, I will show her when I'm about to do a demonstration. So when I do the demonstration, I will hold up the needle so you can see they are tiny. They're super small. And I will show some of the creations as well. So when I first started making these needle felted things, they were a little bit bigger and not nearly as elegant. And now I am much better at it. And they're kind of a passion project for me. They are very fiddly and they take a lot of time. And I think sensible people would think that it was not a great business venture, honestly, but they are so much fun for me. And I find people have great joy when they see them. And so I think that one of my things that I would love to be able to say about my business is that I can bring people joy. So here is my little sprinkle donut. He's little. He has some on the back. I always add a little bit of brown so that you know he's cooked. We have a watermelon. Here's one of our macarons. So, and the pineapple is super popular and honestly a real pain in the butt to make, but I'm always so proud when I make the pineapple because it's such a challenge. And all of the details I hand stitch on at the end with cotton thread. But I really truly love making them. I've made so many different ones over the times that back in Halloween I had a candy corn, a little skull. I have hearts in every color. And this is probably another one of my favorites is I have the little witch. I love the ones that have faces. Someone challenged me by asking if I could make the gnome in the previous slide. Let me see if I can get there again. The gnome that's at the top, they challenged me. They said, "Oh, you know, I would really love it if you could make a gnome." And I did, and it was just like the funnest thing. I know that's not a real word, but that's the only word I can use. It was so much fun to make this little gnome and everyone thought it was adorable. So these are my little fun things. So I'm going to show you next how I make one of them. And if I can just get my position right, I'm going to make the Boston cream donut. Last time I made, when I did a demonstration, I made the sprinkle donut. Today I'm going to make the Boston cream donut if I can find my glasses. So Barbara was asking about what needles. So I usually have these 3 needles. Eventually one of them is going to break. I can tell it already. This is the thickest one. I don't know if you can see. It's not very thick. And I usually have little like thimbles that I put on my thumbs and fingers so I don't stab myself. And I didn't think to keep those out. So they're covered by all of the setup that I've got here, so I can't get them. So if I'm going to apologize in advance if I use any colorful language when I inevitably stab myself in the finger. So those are the needle sizes that I use to make the felting with. This is my wee tiny little needle that I use to add the embroidered details on afterwards. So for making the Boston cream, I start with this color. So I actually have one more brown. I had gotten these colors and the fourth color as a collection of skin tones, and then afterwards realized that skin and baked goods are often the same colors. So here is the one that I use to make my donuts. And what I find to be the most successful is if I can tightly wrap it into approximately the shape that I want. It means that I have to stab it less. If I'm not tight enough when I start, then I will have to stab it more than if I do a good job of binding it tightly. So now is a great time for questions because this is going to take a hot minute to do. Like I said, they aren't quick things to do. The Boston cream donut was inspired by my son because it is his favorite. donut ever. My dad used to always drop by and bring my kids packs of Timbits. And then my son discovered a Boston cream donut one day and has never looked back. And now my dad brings them. The little guy always gets sprinkles, which is where the sprinkle donut came from. And the big guy always gets a Boston cream. It's kind of our little ritual, even throughout the pandemic, because my dad can just drop it on the doorstep and run away. And it's like a little donuts of love, you know? The one thing that I haven't done lately, but I would normally do, is after I'm done a felting project, you can see, maybe you can't see on the camera, but there's often some of the fiber gets left on the felting block. And I normally take like packaging tape to remove that. So right now I've got sparkles because I was using some stellina in my last felting that I was doing to make for a sparkly stitch marker. And now I'm nearly getting sparkly donut. So I'm trying to pick it out as I see it. But yeah, you just kind of stab it and stab it and stab it. And as you stab it, it compresses the wool. Basically, well, sorry for all the deep breaths. It's a little tricky to breathe with the mask. And, the wool fibers have kind of, they're called cuticles, but they're kind of like scales. Everybody's hair has them as well. And the wool has these cuticles that are a little bit barbed. And when you agitate them, the same way as if you threw your beloved sweater into the dryer, if you agitate them enough, they will shrink and felt together. And so that is exactly what we're doing with the needle, is forcing that agitation just in a dry format. So there is such a thing as wet felting as well. If you've ever heard of somebody spit splicing their yarn, I don't recommend you use spit. It's a little bit gross, but that's when you're using 100% wool. And if rather than tie a knot or make a Russian join or anything like that, when I do it, I use a little bit of water from a glass and you kind of agitate it together, or even you can use a needle to do it with the water, and that felts it together to make a join. So it's kind of a similar process. In fact, if I want something to be especially smooth when I'm needle felting it, I do keep a little container of water beside me, and I kind of dip my fingers into it and wet down what I'm felting, and kind of, especially if I'm doing something that's a perfect circle, or like a sphere, I will put a little bit of water in my hand and then roll it really hard to try and just get the most perfect version of the shape that I'm aiming for. I also go in at the end of all of my needle felting with tiny little, almost like embroidery scissors, and I snip off all the wayward hairs so that it's as tidy and tight looking as it can be. So while I'm going, I'd love it if anybody has any suggestions for my future collections. I'm always looking for ideas for these little stitch markers because they are, like I said, they're my little fun project. I love them so much. And anytime anybody buys them, it gives me so much joy because I always had so much fun making them. So that's about.
So those are the cupcakes.
Ooh, cupcakes would be fun. That would be cute. I do enjoy making things with like multiple versions of the same thing. Sorry, that's
okay. I'm coming.
That's the small human who Our children are still at an age where they feel the need to announce it every time they have to use the toilet. And so I apologize that you've now experienced two of those such announcements. But so so that's the start of our donut. And of course, it's not a Boston cream without chocolate on top. So the next part would be to use this. And again, I try and get it as close to the shape that I want to begin with. And that is in part because when you are adding to the previously felted piece, if I just went ham and stabbed the new yarn or the new color in, what will happen is it will stab through the other side, and almost similar to if you're doing like punch needle, rug hooking, you would end up pushing that fiber out the other side. So unless I really wanted chocolate on both sides of this thing, that's never going to be a good plan. So you have to kind of be mindful. I find that it ends up taking a little bit more care than people realize to make these things. So I start by felting it a little to the side. It always feels like I'm making a very small toupee when I start the chocolate.
Annie says, do you do assorted mushrooms?
I do have red mushrooms, red with spots. I don't think I have. I think I sold here. Andrew, can you look through here? See if I have a mushroom. Okay. It is very likely I'm sold out of them, but I make my I make the stitch markers to order. So if you had if you see something on the site, which you'll see my red mushroom on the site for sure. If you wanted the red mushroom to be green or blue or yellow or mushroom colored, you wanted it in brown, I've done that. Just shoot me a message. I'm always open to trying. And if it's something that for whatever reason I can't do at that time, I'll just be honest with you. But usually I have a lot of felting fiber. So I have a lot of different colors, and I'm pretty open to making things in whatever color. But yeah, I do carry a red one, red with white spots, kind of like a Super Mario mushroom almost. And I have made it in other colors.
Cheryl says cookies.
Cookies would be good. I almost did cookies when I was thinking of doing the macarons, actually. I almost did cookies. I love cookies. I love food. Felting food is a great way to play with food. I really would like to do like a sliced citrus collection, like lime and lemon and grapefruit, orange. So let's see how it's done. Yeah, so see, I haven't actually gotten too much coming out the other side because I try and go in kind of at a 45-degree angle.
Cheryl also says drinks.
Oh, I would never have thought to do drinks because I'm not totally sure how fuzzy drinks work, but yeah, I would totally try it for sure. Like, are you thinking cocktails or like hot beverages, or I guess this could be anything. Okay, so I only have 10 more minutes, so I'm not going to make that top perfect. I would usually go around and make sure, like I said, with my scissors and make all of these fluffies go away. And I'm not quite happy with how close to the edge that is. That should come out a little bit further, but you get the point. My favorite part about the Boston cream though is to add the cream, because it's not a Boston cream if there's no cream in it, is there? So this part is quite important in this one. So I have this white, and now here is where it becomes important that I make sure none of the brown is at the bottom, because I don't want brown in my cream. But I will, that might be too much. So yeah, so then I grab this white and kind of just stab it into a neat little circle. And it's probably not going to show on this camera. I will try and bring it closer to the big camera after. Or I'll just go back to the photograph where you can probably see it most clearly. But yeah, then now there's a little cream spot in there, which, like I said, I'm not sure you're going to see terribly clearly. But if I go back to here, you can see it really clearly in that Boston cream that's at the bottom there. So that is how I make my needle felted stitch markers. That is just one. Oh, there's the mushroom. You can see the mushroom right at the top in between the gnomes. That is how I make those stitch markers. And speaking of those stitch markers, this is, I'm going to just make it without my face on it right now. This is a special project stitch marker set that I've come up with for the Be a Freaking Unicorn project. I don't know how many people have heard of this project. I imagine a lot of people have heard of it by now. But the Be a Freaking Unicorn project was started by a group of Ontario-based independent dyers, and I was privileged to be amongst that first group of people to discuss this. But it was the brainchild of a few of the independent dyers, centered around the idea that everyone has a unique creative perspective to bring to the table. And the initial idea was for different dyers to produce different colorways based on the idea of, if you want to be a unicorn, be a freaking unicorn. And $5 from every skein of hand dyed yarn that is dyed for this, or 20% of any other products, will be donated to an organization of each maker's choice that serves their local LGBTQ community. So the first thing that I thought when I approached this project was, if you want to be a unicorn, be a freaking unicorn of the sea. And I went with the theme of a narwhal. And I didn't realize it at the time, but a narwhal has been used a few times in like bisexual pride um, paraphernalia, because there's a lot of, I guess, bisexual erasure in both in both the LGBTQ community and in the straight community. And so the idea is that narwhals exist. They're like the unicorns that exist. So there's that. And so I wanted to take that concept and again use the Bi Pride flag colors, which are pink, purple, and blue. And originally intended to do a colorway inspired by that. But unfortunately, I was exposed to an allergen a couple of weeks ago that laid me out for a week, and then got COVID. And so I haven't been able to dye any yarn because of that. And so instead, I made this little narwhal, which you can see in the picture, this little narwhal, which I will also show here because he is much cuter on film. So this set I will be offering with the um, bracelet exclusively. And he is very cute. He's a little, oh my goodness, he's very mobile. He's a little narwhal with a little face and a little smile. and a little horn and a little tail. And he is gray with pink and blue and purple. And it's hard to show on the camera, but he is sparkly. And they have a little yellow horn. And the stitch markers that they come with are blue and purple and pink and yellow. And they come on this. And if you haven't seen this kind of bracelet before, it unhooks. It's adjustable so that it should fit most anybody, and it unhooks to allow you to change the stitch markers that you have on there or just access them for your use. So when you unhook it, your stitch marker can just come off. And I have these bracelet bangles as an upgrade to any of my stitch marker sets you can get on the site as well. So that is my if you want to be a unicorn, be a freaking unicorn contribution. Hopefully people like him, and I will be donating 20% of my sales on that product to PFLAG York Region, which is the local branch of PFLAG for my community that supports LGBTQIA plus community members within York Region. So that is that. But if you want to know more about the Be a Freaking Unicorn project, follow them at Be a Freaking Unicorn on Instagram, or you can go to beafreakingunicorn.com for more details. All of the different makers' work will go live on their site, on that site, as a gallery format with no identifying features for the makers, so that you're really looking at the gallery of what's available. And when you click on it, it will take you to that maker's site specifically, which is really cool. And that will go live on May 1st, and sales will continue until May 24th. And it is our intention upon completion. I mean, it's up to each maker to deliver on what you've ordered, but it was the intention, that the hope that because we were doing it in May instead of in June, that the communities that we were supporting would be getting a boost outside of when they normally would get a boost in June for Pride Month. And it would also allow people who are purchasing the yarns and trinkets and accessories and things to be able to use that during Pride Month and feel like they were doing something with Pride. Now, I did want to do an extra giveaway for a $25 gift card for somebody in the audience. It just, as a thank you for everyone who's participated, and I just think it's fun. So for that, my birthday just passed on April 17th, and I think it's fun to kind of use that as a jumping point. So if anybody has a birthday that is also in April.
Does Carrie get to be on this one too?
No, if Carrie's here, who won last time, you may not win again. But the next closest person to my birthday will get a $25 gift card. I just figure that's the easiest way for me to choose somebody, because juggling emails and stuff will be tricky. Now, I know everybody is also playing bingo with Fibre Love Affair. And so my bingo word is supplies. So if you are looking still for your bingo words, that is the bingo word from this show, is supplies. So please do that. So pop it in the chat if you feel your birthday is close to April 17th. And my husband is taking track of that, and he will get your email address maybe, or your Instagram handle, or whatever way you'd like us to communicate that with you. And I think that is it. So just a reminder that my website is prettylittleyarns.ca. You can find me on Instagram at Pretty Little Yarns LTD. If you don't put the LTD, you're going to find someone totally different. So the LTD is important. And then my email you can find through the website as well. And of course, the discount code, which is good until May 15th. So I want to take an extra moment to thank Eureka and everybody at Fibre Love Affair for having me today and for putting up with all of my random frantic emails of I got COVID, this is going to be tricky, and please help. And all of those things. So thank you to everybody who supported me this week while I was trying to figure out how I could continue to do this. So yeah, I hope.
Diane, who's April 19th.
Oh, Diane, you for sure win. No?
Looks like it.
Awesome.
Are March.
All right.
And 1 February.
Yeah, awesome. I've totally lost Zoom on my screen. So, oh, here it is. I'm like, I can't see the audience, but there they are. So, yes, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. And I think, Eureka, you had said that you were going to be doing a draw as well for that stitch marker set.